I haven't visited the school videos for a long time. I was in grade 10, as I recall, and I was really hanging out at a different school most of the time. Eventually, I got caught, and I had to go look for a job. But mostly, I went to that other school and still hung out every day. But eventually, I got a job at a place that made machine parts. And this was, what year was that? About 1969, I think. They made machine parts. They paid $1.15 an hour, I think. Maybe not that much. But for people who thought Canada was not involved in the Vietnam War, you're not right in thinking that at all. Two of the main things we made at this small machine part place was the parts for a parachute. Really small part for a parachute. And another big item, the company was thriving on these two items. The second item was a very, very small part for a hand grenade. Very well made, very precision-like. I think it had to do with compression. One of the parts that had to do with compression inside the hand grenade. To us, they were just two metal parts that we made and shipped in great numbers. And they had to be treated a certain way and then plated, and that's how the company made money, making parts for the Vietnam War, or for the U.S. Army. But they went to Vietnam, no doubt. Lots of grenades and lots of parachutes, and we made little parts for both of them. I think the people there, they were from a low end of Montreal. Many of them were criminals, I think, that got out of jail and so on. Rough crowd. And they went on strike one day. Just went on strike. Just walked out. We're not working anymore until we get a raise. And they got it. In the same day, they got the raise up to whatever 10 cents an hour more was, to $1.25 or maybe $1.35 even. Eventually, I got a job right next door at a place. They had parts for hydraulic parts, mostly for mining and the lumber industry, for sawmills and things like that. And I worked there for a summer. I worked at the other place for quite a few months, and then summer I worked at this place with hydraulic parts. And around October, September, August, September, I kind of wanted to go back to school. And I wanted to go back to the school that I was hanging out at for all this time when I was supposed to be in my regular school. I liked the school. I liked it a lot, actually. Still do. You had a lot of free time, and you could do good or bad with that free time, but you were given freedom. And my dad had to go, and it was not nice. He had to go and renounce his Catholicism in order for me to go to the Protestant school. And my whole family had to switch over to the Protestant system as well, which well, at least one of them thought that was a great idea. Um, but anyway, the switch was made, and I went to the Protestant school, and I wanted to do really well. I really, really wanted to excel, and I was all excited to go there. And I had just gotten a new job that one day for Sony, working in the warehouse for Sony. They hired me right away. And at noon hour, I found out I'd been accepted at the school, so I had to tell the man I can't work here anymore. He said, well, you just started. I said, I know, but I'm going to go back to school. And he said, okay, I'll pay you for the half a day. And I said, no, don't pay me anything. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And the next day I went to the school I'd hung around for years, but never went to, determined to do good. But it didn't last more than a week. I struggled. I had a hard time learning. Okay, I'm going to skip the whole year. I had a hard time. I really did. But I tried. And then somewhere in that year, marijuana entered into the picture, and that made it more interesting. And other things like hashish. I still hadn't drunk beer or anything like that, but this marijuana. No, I didn't start with marijuana. I started with acid. I took a drop of acid. And it's not going to affect me because I'm strong. And I couldn't figure out. It was about 8 o'clock at night when I was walking home from the park, and why was I lying in the ditch across the street from my house? That was a strange thing to be doing, sitting in the ditch. But when you realize that where the cars went on the road, that was not really a road. It suddenly became an airstrip, and airplanes were landing all the time on this road near my house. And so I had to take cover. I had to go in the ditch so I didn't get hit by an airplane. So I think the acid was having an effect. I think it was. Oh boy. But in school, I got through, but it was hard. I just had a hard time with it, and I tried really hard, but it didn't. I was not the smartest cookie in the jar in academics. Some things I could do good, but a lot of it, biology, my goodness, those words were so long. And, well, good luck trying to figure those things out. Didn't do good in biology. Chemistry, not so bad. Math was okay. English, a lot of rules in English. And the teacher kept sort of indicating that, I think you got something there. And I could feel him telling me that, but I never felt I had anything. Although one day I remember writing a story. I was supposed to write a story, and I wrote, "The grass was as green as the sky was blue." And no one believed that I wrote that by myself, but I did. I thought that was pretty neat, actually. Okay, so I got through the school year, but how? Well, it had a little flair to it that maybe you don't want on your resume exactly. There was a vice principal there. I think it was the vice principal. Yeah, he was a vice principal. He knew I went to the school before. Well, he knew I hung around there, and he treated me well. I don't know if he actually knew I didn't belong there or not. I only found out many decades later that he didn't always let on what he knew. He knew lots of things he didn't say. So what he knew, I don't know. But I liked him. I respected him. But during the course of the year, we had an auction for the teachers. You bid on a teacher, and you got them to be your slave for a day. and didn't I bid on the vice principal, and he was my slave for the day, and I had him wrestle the meanest guy in school. I had him wrestle him, and a few other things that I really wish I hadn't have done now. But I did, and that's how it was. And then in the student teacher hockey game at the winter carnival, the student teacher hockey game, I was the referee, and I threw the principal, the vice principal, I threw him out of the game because, well, at that time, as I remember, he was a defenseman, and the goalie was out of the picture for some reason, and there was a scramble in the crease for the puck, and he put his hand, as a defenseman, he put his hand on the puck and he covered it up so nobody could get it. And at that time, I believe the rule said that you were ejected from the game for doing that. Now, I can't find that rule anymore. It couldn't have been a penalty shot because you can't put your hand on the puck when on the crease when they could just knock it into the net. A penalty shot wouldn't be fair. You should get an automatic goal. But it seems to me that at that time you were ejected from the game. And anyway, I went by the rules and I ejected him from the game, which wasn't too popular because he was a likable person. But I did that. Okay, going to the last part, which is the part you really don't want on your resume. Somebody had broken into some houses and he had a good stash of liquor, not houses, garages, and he had a good stash of liquor in the woods, and he asked me to help him bring it into the school and put it in a spare locker he had. So I went with him and I brought a few bottles, 5 or 6 bottles, and put them in the spare locker. And one of them was a bottle of Seagram's 83, a 26-ounce bottle of Seagram's 83, of which about 6 ounces had already been drunk. And he said to me, "I bet you couldn't drink the rest of it." Oh, well, I was challenged, so of course I could drink the rest of it. I had never drunk in my life, ever. Didn't know anything about it. So I proceeded to try to drink 20 ounces of Seagram's 83 whiskey at school about 11 in the morning or something like that. 12. I did pretty good for a while, but I couldn't quite finish it. It was hard to drink that much. So I went up to the school cafeteria, which I hung out a lot at anyway, and I remember running across the tops of all the tables in the cafeteria to get to the vending machine so I could get some orange pop so I could mix it with Seagram's 83. Well, that didn't go so well. I mean, I got away with running across the tops of the tables, but orange pop and Seagram's 83 whiskey do not really go together all that well. So I had a little bit more, and I gave it up. I don't know how many ounces were left, but not many. And I returned the bottle, and I went outside. I didn't have a class until 1:45, I think. Possibly 2. That was later in the day. I had no classes for a long period. And I wasn't really feeling that good. So I thought I'd go outside, and when the buses come at 3 o'clock or whatever it was to take you home, and I'll just sit there and kind of get feeling better again. But apparently when you drink a whole bunch of a bottle, most of a bottle, it has an effect on you. And I think I went to sleep outside actually. And I didn't get to that last class. And then when I woke up, I noticed all the buses were there and people were starting to go home. And I thought, I think I threw up at that point. I just threw up on the grass because it wasn't good to have all that poison in your system. And that was probably a good thing that I threw it up. So I thought, well, I got to get out of here. So I thought I'd go across the football field and down to the big road and down the road a bit down to the lake at Centennial Park. I'd just go sit by the lake until I felt better and go home for supper. That was what my plan was. So I left the bus area and I got about halfway across the football field, and I think I went back to sleep. I just lay down and went back to sleep. Well, it started to rain, and I didn't know nothing about that. I just went to sleep. It was raining, and about 3 o'clock or 3:15, I guess the gym teacher came outside, and he noticed this body lying in the middle of the football field in the rain, and he thought that was a strange thing. So he came down to ask how I was doing, and I said, "Oh, I'm doing just fine. Thank you. Well, why'd you ask?" And he took me to the nurse's room, and they called my mother, and she had to come pick me up and take me home. And I think I slept all night until morning. In the morning I went to school as usual, and nobody seemed to. A few students talked to me about it, but teachers didn't seem to know about it. And I got to my very last class, which was the one I missed the day before, but nobody said anything. The teacher never said anything. I got away with it. Yay! Oh boy. And then with 5 minutes to go in the class, the intercom went off, and it asked that I would come down to the office right away. And I knew the game was up. I've been found. I had to go and stand before the charges against me, I suppose. And I went down to the vice principal's office, and he said, "Well, just sit yourself down." Now, this happened to be the same vice principal that I bought as a slave and put through some things I wish I hadn't have done. And he's the same vice principal that I threw out of the teacher-student hockey game. So maybe this wasn't the best person to go before with a charge of being drunk and skipping class and just not being a very good person. But I had a lot of respect for him before, and I have even much more respect for him now. And at that moment, I gained a whole bunch more respect for him, because he said, "Look, I know what you've done. You know what you've done. And we both agree you're wrong. You shouldn't have done that." And I agreed. I shouldn't have done this. Now, there was one day of school left before we wrote our exams. There was one more day to go. And he said, "I have to do something because of what you've done. I have to take some action." So he said, "I'm suspending you for the rest of the year." And I thought, wow. Oh, he said, I'm suspending you for the rest of the year, but you can come back and take your exams. Well, the exams started in 2 days, and he was suspending me for the rest of the year, so I was just going to miss 1 day. But on paper, my punishment was student suspended for the remainder of the year. So he did exactly the right thing. He gave a strict punishment, suspended me for the rest of the year. But it turned out to only be 1 day. And we both acknowledged that I had done a foolish thing, and nothing more had to be said. What a good way to treat you. Like, you're young, you made a mistake, I've got to make it look good, you're suspended for the rest of the year, don't do it anymore. And that was it. I got a 1 day suspension. And then I wrote my exams and essentially passed, and high school was over. Uh, I think that one day I went back to the school and hung around like normal anyway, but that doesn't matter. And as far as I know, well, I do know, that vice principal, he continued to work. This was in 1969, and he continued to work with students, and I think troubled students, but I'm not positive. He continued to work with them at the school board up until about a year and a half ago. And there was a reason I had a lot of respect for him. And he loved his job, he loved the kids, and he tried to do what was best for them. Up until just a year and a half ago. And he had to be old. He had to be well into his 80s, I would think. And ironically, that girl I helped out when I used to hang out at the school and just play cards and not really go anywhere, when I was supposed to be going to a different school, and I helped her in math. Ironically, she continued to work for the school and the school board and worked with this man right up until he retired. Anyway, I didn't tell you much about grade 10 except that incident. I don't think I ever drank again, really. I didn't really like it. Beer was okay. Wine was okay. But the hard stuff, that occasionally some special drink, but no, it wasn't not for me. Whoops. Yeah. Okay, that was my that was my last year of high school anyway. I did graduate. I'll just leave it there. End of story. Thank you.